Today I'm gonna do some chicken thighs on the smoker. So what I've done is I've already prepped my chicken thighs. I washed them off and cleaned them off. I also trimmed off any excess fat and skin that I didn't want. So what I'm gonna use to create like my kind of bonding agent for my seasoning is I'm gonna use just some yellow mustard, and then I've got some Valentina salsa picante hot sauce. And so I'm going to mix those in, and then I'm going to stir them up. And this is what I'm going to put on here before we add any seasoning. So, a lot of people will say, I only use a dry rub when I'm smoking. But for me, I like to experiment. And one thing that I learned last week when I was doing some thighs was that this mixture gives really nice color, and then it also gives good flavor. The seasoning seemed to stick really well to the chicken and the skin, so it crisped up and it had a really good flavor. So I'm going to mix all of this up. And once we mix this up a little bit, I'm going to add a little bit more, and then we'll do the seasoning. So I mixed up the hot sauce and the mustard, and I added a little bit more mustard and tossed it up again, so you can see I've got that coated nicely. Be sure before you add the mustard and the hot sauce that you drain off any excess water. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to season this with some Bandito dust, and I've got some Holy Smoke dry rub, pepper. I'm going to use a little onion powder and garlic powder. And then I've got some fresh basil from the garden that I've dried. So I'm going to add that in, and we're going to go generous portions of all of this. That's my onion. And then I'm going to add a nice bit of this. This really gives good flavor and color. And then I'm going to put in some Bandito dust. Once I do that, I'm going to mix it all up, and then we'll see if we need to add more. All right, so I have my meat prepped, and I am bringing the smoker up to temp now. So I've got some lump charcoal on there. It's getting hot, and that's going to come up to temp here pretty soon. So you see that I've got it set up to just run 2 racks today. I've got a rack of ribs I'm going to put up here, but I'm going to put all the chicken down here closer to the direct heat, and that's going to help when we are getting the chicken skin crispy. I've got a probe back here near the firebox. That way I can get a better reading of what the temperature is closer to that wall. That's a bit more important than what's going on here. But I also have probes that are going in a couple of pieces of chicken, and then the ribs up top. You can also see that I've got this rack sitting pretty close to the probe on the door, so that'll give me a general idea of what the temperature is there. But I'm more concerned with what's going on this lower rack, because I don't want to cook my chicken too fast. So I'll have to keep an eye on that, and I'll do that with my probe that I've got connected to my wireless monitor. So we're going to bring this chicken out here in a minute and put it on just as soon as this thing gets up to about 250. All right, so we got the internal temp up to 250, and you can see I've got the thighs in here loaded upside down with the skin downward. So laying right on that grill grate, it's gonna give it nice direct heat and help with that skin. And then I've got a rack of ribs up here, so I'm about to close it up and let it go for a couple of hours, and then we'll check on it. So the chicken's on here. It's been on here for about 15 minutes. You can see the chambers come back up to temperature. It's setting at about 275. And according to the probe that I've got right there near the cooking surface, it's at 250. So that's where I want my temperature near my cooking surface to be about 250. And so we're just going to let this go for a couple of hours and we'll check on it. So you see there's like a 30-degree difference between what's being read on the temperature gauge on the door and my ambient probe that's right there on the cooking surface of the chicken. So I've got a couple of probes in here. This is just the one I've got on the farther side in the thigh, and then that's on the closer side to the surface. So I'm just going to keep track of these temperatures. It's always a good idea to keep track of ambient and internal temps of your meat. That way you have a really accurate reading of what your temps are. The gauge on the door is okay, but when you want to be a bit more precise, especially if you're cooking pieces of meat that you've got to be careful with cooking temperature and time, you want to use ambient and internal probes for your meat. All right, it's been an hour, so we're just going to take a quick peek in here. Color's coming along nicely. I'm going to add a little bit of a lump, keep the heat up. All right, the chicken's been on there for a little over 2 hours now. So I've brought the temp up to 271. That's that temperature right there, the cooking surface, to try to crisp up that chicken a little bit. So let's go take a look at it. So you can see that skin is starting to crisp up. So I'm going to just let that continue to crisp for about maybe another 30 minutes. It's ready, and I'll pull it off. All right, so here's the final results of about a 3-hour smoke on some chicken thighs. So I took them for the first 2 hours around 250 to 260. And for the last hour, I took it up around 275 and just let it go until the skin crisped up really nicely. So hopefully this was helpful to some of my followers who had questions about how I do my chicken, how I prep, and how I smoke it. So I really love the Bandera for doing quick smokes on stuff like chicken and turkey wings. You really do get a nice finish. So if you enjoyed this, please follow my YouTube page and also follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Geek Meats. Thanks so much for watching.